Hello. So, I'm going to be making a simple little ring with some simple tools a lot of people might have at home out of some random aluminum wire I got here. It's about 3 millimeters thick, but you can use generally any thickness because aluminum is very soft. And you can also work it cold because it is soft, as I said. Well, the things you're going to need are probably some pliers. You can use these, though I find these to be a little more practical because they're more slim at the end, at the point, so that makes turning it a little bit easier. And obviously you're going to be needing a hammer and some sort of surface. Now I have this small little anvil right here, but you really don't need that. You can generally use this area on any this thing. I don't know the name right now. So yeah, how you're going to do it is you're going to take a piece of your material. You can use also different materials, for example copper or brass, but they generally require heat to work them. Aluminum really doesn't, as long as it's not hard aluminum. This is just some very simple soft aluminum, probably just, if at all, a little bit of zinc or no, I don't know what I'm saying, a little bit of magnesium or manganese in there, nothing crazy. Probably not even that, that's probably just pure aluminum. So what you'll do is you'll take your aluminum, get a little piece. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight, but being straight makes it easier to estimate the length and just, yeah, cut it. So what you'll do is you'll take a little straight piece, take your pliers, use the cutting bit to cut off about a span of this stuff. So, well, not even, just a little piece of about this length. It could probably be a little shorter, but I like to be so short, and as I have plenty of material, I'd rather have it be longer than shorter. It is going to be stretched out when forging it, so it could have probably been quite a bit shorter. So what you'll do next is straighten it, or at least I do. You don't necessarily have to, because when forging it, it's going to be straightened anyways, but you'll just use your vise, that's what it's called. And hold on. So I generally use my vise either like this, just straighten it out by doing that, though you will get little scratches on there. I don't know if you can see. You'll get little scratches on the surface. That's why I sometimes don't do that, but that's a very easy way to do it with soft metals. Another way is you can just, if you have it, you can either use a normal hammer and just hammer it a little bit, or also straighten it out, or you can use a hammer made of soft material, so rubber or wood or something that won't scratch it as much. So if your piece is nice and straight, you can go ahead and think about what kind of shape you want it, because aluminum is very difficult to braze or solder. That's why I usually prefer open designs with aluminum. You can either just make it open and have a little slit, or you can even use that as like a design. You can make a good design with it. I don't. For example, you can do things like that, or any other thing. You can make them straight, whatever shape you want, really. because aluminum is so soft that you can generally work it in into any shape. I'm going to do something like that. So what I'll do is I'll take my material and gently bend the ends around to a little bit of a curve. And this is really the first part where it matters what size it needs to be. Just roughly, it doesn't need to be perfect. It'll just affect how strongly the curvature is going to be and how much of the ring. I probably did a little too much, so I'll straighten it back out a little bit. You can do that with pliers as well. And yeah, so I'm just going to bend it around to about a 90-degree curve at the end. Try to make it as good as possible, but it doesn't need to be perfect because you're really not going to see that anyways. Those small little differences, and you can still improve them in the future. So that being done, now we can get to hammering it. Now I have my anvil, but for demonstrations I'm just going to do it on the flat area on my vise, just to show that it is possible and also not terribly difficult. So what you'll do is you'll grab your hammer, normal fashion, and you'll just very gently hitting it to make it flat, so the ring isn't as thick and is more comfortable to wear generally, and just more beautiful as well. So as you can see, that's not terribly difficult. And I've hammered it down a little bit just to make it more comfortable, and it also hardens the aluminum due to the work hardening properties of most metals. And yeah, you can leave it a little thicker, you can make it thinner. Yeah, but you just got to be a little careful not to make any hammering marks, or not too deep, because they'll be a pain to grind them out later. Yeah, it's not perfect, so I'll work over it again, but again, here you won't really see if it's not perfect. It just has to be mostly homogeneous in shape. And if there are small bumps or little differences in thickness, it doesn't really matter too much. Now what I'll do is I'll take my pliers and cut off those ends because they're too long. Now I'll get to rounding it. With a lot of metals, I would recommend putting some sort of round metal like this into your vise and hammering it around. But aluminum really is so soft that you can just bend it by hand. Now you can do that with these pliers, but you've got to be a little careful because you can make marks into your aluminum. But I'll just do it for demonstration anyway. So there's different pliers that work better. I've got these very small ones. They have a smoother surface, so the marks aren't going to be as strong as with this surface right here. But again, because we're before the polishing and grinding, it's not going to be too much of an issue. So I just round it around, and I'm starting to realize that I've probably done it way too long. Actually, never mind. It's looking pretty good. And I just have to do it as good as possible. That's a little bit tricky sometimes, but it's not that difficult. With a little practice, you'll get pretty good at that. And again, here you won't really realize if it's not perfectly round. And now you'll just have to pick a finger that you want it to fit and then bend it to the right shape so that it fits, or the right size. Now at these parts here, I have to be a little careful, because if you just bend it straight like that, you're going to get it's going to do that which you don't really want, because it makes the shape very awkward. So you got to be careful to bend it in the right plane, in the right direction, so it doesn't end up wonky. Now I'll cut off whatever material I do not need. I'm going to cut off about that much. Try to make it as symmetrical as possible, like this. And that's the rough work done, pretty much. Now we'll get to filing it and grinding it. For that, I'll be using this small file right here, but you don't necessarily need one. If you have very rough grit sandpaper, that's generally enough, but it's going to take a little longer, obviously. So I'll just file off all these sharp edges first, so I don't cut myself when handling it, which is something you should always do first to avoid injuries. And yeah, so I'm just going to do that. So I'm done deburring the edges. So now I'm going to try and smooth out the surface, because you can see it's still very, very rough from the hammering. And we want that to be a little smoother, to be more beautiful and more comfortable to wear. So just gently grind off the surface a little bit to make it a little bit smoother. Something that I want to mention is that I'd advise you to wear some sort of breathing protection, like a particle filtering mask of sorts, or just do it in a well ventilated room, or even outside if you can, because the aluminum dust, whilst it's not necessarily toxic, it's not very good to breathe in. It can give you aluminum poisoning if you breathe in a lot of it, especially the finer dust from polishing it. Also filing the inside, just for a little bit of comfort, because you won't really be seeing that, but having this uneven surface on your skin isn't going to be very comfortable. So it's not really visible, but I made a little thing I accidentally cut into the aluminum a little. That just goes to show you how soft this material is. I just filed over it a bit to reduce it as much as possible, but it doesn't really, you don't really see it. It's not really a bother. Stuff like that will happen, and you will have to try your best to work over it, but yeah, but stuff like that happens. So yeah, that's looking pretty good. I'm actually quite happy with that. Now I'll go on to polish it. So for that, I'll first start with a very rough grit sandpaper. This is, I think, 240 grit, but you can go a little rougher, or you can also just go a little bit finer from the get-go. And you just grind out all the filing marks. For that, I'm actually going to be putting on a particle filtering mask. So now that it looks mostly good, I'll move on to a finer grit sandpaper. Now, I don't have that many different grits. I usually jump directly to 400 or 600, but to make it a little easier, I would advise you to use a few different steps in between. But it's easier to just get 600. I don't want to have to buy so many different grits, so I usually just go from 240 to 600, and it works. But you'll get a better result if you use more steps in between. Now, I would definitely advise to use some sort of breathing protection, or definitely do that outside, because you will get a lot of dust in the air, which is not good to breathe in. So, so now I'm done with 600, and you can leave it at that if you have nothing else, nothing more fine. Though I'd make sure that all the grains are aligned for a more, just so, because it's more beautiful. Or you can just go on with finer sandpaper if you have, or you can also use some steel wool, which gives a very nice finish, which is what I'm going to do. So my phone died, but I only lost a little bit, so it's fine. I just finished polishing it with steel wool, and here is the final result. I think it looks pretty good. It's not the best I've ever done, but yeah, I think it looks pretty good. This is a ring that I made previously, and I took a little longer with this one, a little bit more time with this one, and so I also think it looks a lot better. It is also significantly more round than the other one, as you can see. Because I also used these pliers for it. I use these pliers, which are a little bit better for shaping round things than this. But I just wanted to show that it's also possible with something as simple as this, because that is what I started with. Yeah. So that's it.